Rip Wheeler has been watching, listening, quietly connecting dots nobody else dared to look at, and in episode 7, he may finally get the one answer that changes everything. Because the person behind these attacks on the ranch isn't some outside enemy. It's someone who has been standing right inside the gate the entire time. Someone who knows every weakness, every secret, every plan. And what Rip is about to discover could destroy the ranch from the inside out. Going into episode 7, something has already shifted at Dutton Ranch. The attacks are no longer something anyone can explain away. Fences destroyed, cattle missing, equipment damaged, security breached at hours that make absolutely no sense. And for weeks, everyone on the ranch assumed this was the work of outside enemies, rivals, land developers, opportunists with money, and lawyers who wanted the property gone. But Rip Wheeler stopped believing that a long time ago. Because Rip doesn't just react, he watches, he thinks. And something about these attacks started feeling deeply, personally wrong. Every single hit came at the exact wrong time. Every disruption happened right after a private conversation or a closed-door decision. Too precise, too targeted, too personal. And that's the moment Rip stopped looking beyond the gate and started looking inside it. Because if someone out there knew exactly when to strike, exactly where the ranch was most vulnerable, there was only one explanation that made any sense. Somebody on the inside was feeding them information. Now, Rip doesn't panic. He never has. But what makes episode 7 so dangerous is that Rip is now operating completely alone. He hasn't told Beth, he hasn't told anyone. Because if there's a leak inside the ranch, tipping off the wrong person before he has proof could make everything worse. So instead, Rip starts investigating quietly. Security footage, ranch records, attack timelines. He begins mapping every major incident against every private conversation that happened just before it, and what he finds stops him completely cold. Every coordinated breach, every organized hit on the property, every moment where the enemy seemed to know exactly what move the ranch was about to make. All of it happened within hours of a closed meeting or a private plan being discussed. Not once, not twice, every single time without exception. And that's not bad luck. That is not coincidence. That is someone actively and deliberately leaking information to an enemy who is using it to destroy everything from the outside. And Rip knows it now with complete certainty. The only question burning in his mind is who. Early in episode 7, Rip reportedly receives a warning from the last person he expected. Not from law enforcement, not from Beth, not from anyone in the family, but from a ranch worker, someone who has been watching, staying quiet, growing more nervous by the day, until they finally decide they can no longer stay silent. Imagine this moment. Rip is working alone near the barn, focused, and someone approaches him slowly, checking over their shoulder, clearly terrified of being seen talking to him. And then this worker says something that lands like ice water. Stop trusting everyone around you. Rip doesn't react immediately. He waits. And then the worker reveals something staggering. They overheard a conversation they weren't supposed to hear. Someone on the ranch secretly meeting with outsiders late at night, not just talking, exchanging detailed information about the property, talking money, talking about timelines, talking about forcing Beth and Rip permanently off the land. And suddenly, this isn't about stolen cattle or broken fences anymore. Someone has been running a long, calculated game to bring the ranch down from the inside, and they have been doing it right under everyone's nose. This is exactly what makes episode 7 feel like the biggest turning point of the season, because everything Rip believed about these attacks starts rewriting itself in his mind all at once. This enemy isn't acting impulsively. They are not desperate outsiders looking for a quick opportunity. They are organized, deeply patient, and unbelievably personal. They know the ranch layout. They know the operation. They know the family's pressure points. And they know exactly how much damage they can cause before anyone figures out where it's coming from. And the thought Rip cannot shake, the one that keeps hitting him harder the more he thinks about it, is this. How long has this already been going on? Because if these attacks trace back months, if the information leaks run deeper than one person, the ranch may already be far more compromised than anyone realizes. Beth is still operating as though the threat is entirely external. She's fighting financial battles, pushing back against outside investors, holding every visible line as hard as she can, but she cannot see what Rip is beginning to see. And that gap between what Beth knows and what Rip is uncovering could be the single most dangerous thing on the ranch right now. Rip needs answers fast, but every person he looks at differently, every quiet movement he tracks, every side conversation he watches from a distance only raises more questions. Because whoever is behind this is smart enough to stay completely hidden in plain sight. And the closer Rip gets to the truth, the more something terrifying becomes clear. This person isn't panicking, they aren't running, they are still right there, still operating, still feeding information, and they may already know that Rip is getting dangerously close to uncovering them. So what happens when Rip finally backs the one person he believes has the answers into a corner? And what does it mean when that confrontation leads him somewhere far darker than he ever expected? While Rip is quietly tracking every movement and watching every person on the ranch with new eyes, Beth Dutton is fighting a completely different battle. And the terrifying part is that both of them are closing in on the same truth from completely opposite directions without even realizing it. Because Beth has started noticing something deeply wrong inside the ranch financials, numbers that don't add up, payments that disappeared without explanation, property documents showing pressure from investors who should have absolutely no knowledge of the ranch's internal vulnerabilities. And Beth, being Beth, doesn't sit with confusion quietly. She tears everything apart until she finds the source. What she uncovers shakes her, because the financial irregularities aren't random errors or accounting mistakes. They are targeted, specific, designed to create maximum damage at exactly the right moment. Someone has been feeding detailed financial information about the ranch directly to outside forces, and those outside forces have been using it to apply pressure at every single weak point, at every moment when the ranch was least equipped to push back. Beth has fought corporate enemies before. She understands manipulation and she understands power. But this feels different. This feels intimate. And that is what finally makes Beth's blood run cold. Because for this level of damage to happen, the person responsible didn't just have access to general information. They had access to everything. Private conversations, internal decisions, financial strategies Beth only discussed behind closed doors with people she trusted completely. And now she is sitting there, alone, staring at documents that tell her one devastating thing. Someone she trusted chose the other side. Someone who sat at the same table, heard the same plans, and then walked out and handed all of it to the enemy. This is where episode 7 starts building towards something explosive, because Beth and Rip are both reaching the same conclusion at the same time, but neither of them is telling the other what they know yet. Rip is protecting his investigation, Beth is protecting her rage, and that silence between them, that gap where honesty should exist, is exactly the kind of crack an enemy exploits. The people attacking the ranch don't need to break down the gate if they can break down the trust between the two most powerful people defending it. And right now, without either of them fully realizing it, that is exactly what is happening. Things between Beth and Rip reportedly reach a breaking point inside episode 7 because Beth starts suspecting someone close to her, and Rip believes she is wrong. Not because he wants to protect the person she suspects, but because Rip has been watching, tracking, and the evidence he has gathered quietly points somewhere else entirely. And so for the first time in a long time, these two find themselves standing on opposite sides of the same problem. Beth wants to act immediately. Rip needs more time. Beth believes hesitation is weakness. Rip knows that one wrong move could let the real enemy disappear forever. Picture this moment. Beth walks in with documents, eyes burning, completely done waiting for answers. She lays everything on the table and tells Rip directly who she thinks is responsible. And Rip doesn't agree. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't argue loudly. He just looks at her with that calm, heavy silence and says, she's wrong. And for Beth Dutton, being told she's wrong about something this personal, this serious, by the one person she trusts above everyone else, doesn't land quietly. It detonates. Because Beth isn't just angry about the betrayal anymore. She is furious that Rip seems to be holding back. And in her mind, if Rip is protecting someone, what does that mean? This is the kind of tension that makes episode 7 feel genuinely dangerous, because the enemy outside the gate has done something truly calculated. They haven't just attacked the ranch financially or physically, they have positioned themselves so perfectly that when the truth starts surfacing, it fractures the one relationship holding everything together. The cracks between Beth and Rip don't come from a lack of love. They come from two people who both desperately want to protect the ranch but cannot agree on how. And every second they spend fighting each other is another second the real enemy operates completely unchallenged. Meanwhile, Rip's quiet investigation keeps pushing forward, and the picture he is building gets darker with every piece he adds. Because after tracking movements, reviewing timelines, and processing everything the ranch worker told him, Rip begins narrowing his focus to one specific person. Not because this person is the most obvious suspect, actually the opposite. They are the last person anyone would look at. Someone who blends in completely. Someone whose loyalty was never once questioned. someone whose access to sensitive information was simply never treated as a risk because nobody ever imagined it could be. And that invisibility, that complete absence of suspicion, is exactly what made them so effective. Rip watches this person for a full day without saying a single word, and what he sees confirms something he was already beginning to believe. The behavior is subtle but unmistakable once you know what you're looking at. Conversations that end too quickly when Rip gets close. Unexplained absences during exactly the hours when external threats tend to escalate. A nervousness that wasn't there before. Not the nervousness of someone innocent who senses danger around them. The nervousness of someone who knows exactly where the danger is coming from because they are the one creating it. And then late in episode 7, Rip makes his move. He doesn't gather the family, he doesn't call anyone, he finds this person alone, and he puts them in a position where there is nowhere to run and no story that holds together. And the confrontation is everything you would expect from Rip Wheeler. No theatrics, no long speeches, just cold, quiet, immovable certainty. And for a moment, it looks like Rip is finally about to get the full truth. But then something happens outside that nobody saw coming. And suddenly Rip realizes something that turns everything on its head. The person he has been tracking this entire time may not be the one making the decisions. They may just be the one taking the orders. That single realization changes everything. Because Rip Wheeler built his entire investigation around finding the source, the one person responsible, the one leak he could plug to stop the bleeding and protect the ranch. But standing there in that confrontation, watching the person in front of him crumble under pressure, Rip starts hearing something that doesn't fit. The details are too small, the access too limited, the fear too genuine. And Rip has looked into the eyes of enough people hiding something to know the difference between a mastermind and a middleman. And what he is looking at right now is not the person running this operation, it is someone being used by them. This is the moment episode 7 completely resets itself. Because everything Rip thought he knew, every timeline he built, every connection he mapped out across those late nights in the barn, it was all real. But it only told half the story. There is someone above this. Someone who recruited this person, handed them a role, fed them instructions, and stayed completely invisible the entire time. Someone who understood from the very beginning that if the investigation ever got close, this middleman would absorb all of it while the real architect walked away untouched. And the terrifying thing Rip has to sit with right now is this. That person has been watching this entire investigation unfold. And they let it happen, because they were never afraid of being caught. Before Rip can push further and get a name, headlights cut through the dark outside. A truck pulls up to the ranch that nobody was expecting. Doors open, men step out, and in an instant, Rip understands exactly what is happening. He didn't corner someone tonight, he was led here. The confrontation, the confession, the perfectly timed vulnerability of the person in front of him, all of it was designed to bring Rip to this exact location at this exact moment. And now he is standing inside a trap that was built specifically for him by someone who understood how he thinks, how he investigates, and how far he would push once he believed he was close to the truth. This is what separates the enemy in episode 7 from every threat the ranch has faced before. They didn't just attack the property, they studied the people defending it. They watched how Beth reacts under pressure. They watched how Rip operates when he suspects a threat. They understood that Rip would investigate quietly, alone, without telling anyone, and they built an entire plan around that specific behavior. Which means this isn't just an attack on the ranch. It is an attack on Rip and Beth as individuals, targeted, researched, and executed by someone who knows them both deeply enough to predict exactly what they would do in a crisis. Meanwhile, Beth is still inside the ranch, operating on her own conclusions, pushing in her own direction, completely unaware of what Rip just walked into. And this is where episode 7 becomes almost unbearable to watch. Because the two people who are supposed to be each other's first call, the two people who have survived everything this ranch has thrown at them by standing side by side, are completely separated at the single most dangerous moment of the entire season. Beth doesn't know where Rip is. Rip can't reach Beth without potentially exposing how serious things just became, and the enemy designed it this way on purpose. Because here is the strategy that has been running underneath everything all season. You don't destroy Dutton Ranch by attacking the land survives. You don't destroy it by attacking the finances. Beth rebuilds. You don't destroy it by attacking the workers or the cattle or the equipment. Rip fixes it. The only way you truly destroy Dutton Ranch is by destroying the people at the center of it. Break the trust between Beth and Rip. Isolate them at the critical moment. Let each of them believe they are handling the situation while neither of them has the full picture, and then strike when neither one can protect the other. That is not a desperate plan. That is a patient, intelligent, deeply personal one, and it has been working. By the end of episode 7, the ranch suffers its most serious attack of the season. Not just property damage, not just financial pressure, something that sends a clear and brutal message. This enemy is no longer playing carefully. They are no longer hiding behind subtlety and manipulation. They are ready to move openly now, because they believe the groundwork is done. Beth and Rip are fractured. The investigation has been redirected. The ranch is exposed. And whoever is sitting at the top of all of this has decided that the moment to deliver the final blow is arriving faster than anyone inside those gates is prepared for. And that is what makes the final minutes of episode 7 so devastating, because Beth finally gets information that tells her where Rip is and what he walked into tonight. And the look on her face in that moment isn't just fear. It is the specific terror of someone who realizes they have been played from the very beginning. Every argument, every suspicion, every moment of doubt she felt toward Rip tonight was manufactured, engineered by someone who knew exactly how to turn her instincts into a weapon against herself. And Beth Dutton, who has never once in her life been outmaneuvered, has to sit with the fact that someone just did exactly that. Rip survives the confrontation at the end of episode 7, but what he carries out of it is more dangerous than any physical threat. He now knows something that changes the entire shape of this season. The person at the top of this operation isn't a rival landowner, isn't a corporate enemy, isn't someone operating from a distance who simply wants the property. It is someone connected directly to the Dutton world, someone whose motive isn't business. It is personal, deep, historical, and built on something that happened long before episode 1 ever began. And the name Rip is now holding in his mind, the name he hasn't said out loud yet, the name he hasn't even fully allowed himself to believe yet, is someone Beth will never see coming. Which means the real question heading into episode 8 isn't whether the ranch can survive the attack, it's whether Beth and Rip can survive what they are about to find out about the person who has been standing closest to them this entire time.